I know about with inconsistency uploads since it's exam seasons, but I have some free time to upload a few videos and this is one of them. The reason is editing, but I'm going to be keeping it simple since the new version of Filmora sucks and all the 15 videos I pre-made are now gone because I don't want the premium version. This fanfic is called The Road to be a Pokémon Master, Kanto arc made by Fanatic Guy06. Make sure to check him and etc. Oh yeah, forgot to mention like, subscriber and share this video. All rights belong to Nintendo, Game Freak and etc. I just make the auditory version of this fabulous FIC. Prologue. The road to be a Pokémon Master isn't easy. It's very demanding and filled with danger. There are thick, dark forests, treacherous mountains to climb, and deserts that never seem to end. There are also the Pokémon themselves. They are amazing but also dangerous creatures if mishandled. Some were able to unleash large amounts of electricity to their bodies. Others could breathe fire. Some could even control the land and the sea themselves. Yes, the road to be a Pokémon Master is indeed difficult. Many trainers who attempt this journey do not succeed and are forced to give up. However, the road to be a Pokémon Master is also the most fulfilling and incredible journey one could ask for. The friends one makes with other trainers and the bonds one forms with their Pokémon are unrivaled. Trainers who succeed in the world of Pokémon are rewarded with an unforgettable experience. Two such trainers experienced the highest of highs and lowest of lows on their journey. They started off as just a normal boy and girl in a small town, but they eventually became a legend. Little did they know that their destinies would intertwine, and they would affect the very future of the world itself. Filled with danger but also wonderful memories, these two trainers had a journey unlike any other. One could ask that because of all the danger, was it all worth it in the end? Absolutely. This is the story of Ash Ketchum and Sarina Gabina. XXX Chapter 1, Pallet Town Summer Camp. It was a warm, sunny day in Pallet Town. There was not a cloud in the sky. It was the perfect day for summer camp. Kids were standing side by side in a line, all eager for the next activity. The said activity was going to be a scavenger hunt. It was one of the most anticipated activities at Pallet Town Summer Camp. A young, raven-haired boy with brown eyes at 7 years old was among the most eager of the group. His name was Ash Ketchum. Ash was a very kind, if not a little stubborn, boy. He loved to explore and go out on adventures, which is why he loved scavenger hunts. He always made sure to put his friends and family before anything else. His dream was to become a Pokémon Master. When he turned 10, he was going to set out on his journey and win every badge in the Kanto region and then win the Pokémon League. Next, he would conquer other regions and challenge the Elite Four, the best trainers in the world, of each region. He was determined to become a legend. Another boy in the group stood slightly taller than Ash and had his mouth curled into a smirk. His name was Gary Oak. He also had brown eyes and large, spiky brown hair that went out all over. His grandfather was the famous Pokémon professor of the Kanto region and was considered the authority on Pokémon. Because of this, Gary had grown to have a very arrogant attitude and loved showing off in front of the other kids, particularly Ash Ketchum. They had been rivals for a very long time and were always competing. Like Ash, Gary's dream was to be a Pokémon Master as soon as he became of age. He wanted to destroy any other trainer that crossed his path and gain even more fame than his grandfather. There was also a girl who was very excited for the activity. Her name was Leaf Green. She had brown eyes and long, chestnut-colored hair that went down her back. Leaf was a very energetic and bubbly girl who enjoyed making friends with everyone, Pokémon and people alike. Because of this, she was one of the most well-liked kids in Pallet Town. Despite this, she could sometimes be a loudmouth. She and Ash were good friends and enjoyed exploring and playing together. She even managed to get along with the arrogant Gary Oak sometimes, though they weren't as close as she and Ash were. Unlike Ash and Gary, however, she didn't have any interest in being the greatest Pokémon Master. Her love of Pokémon and exploration inspired her to instead fill up the Pokédex and gain information on every kind of Pokémon there is. However, there was also one girl in the group who wasn't very excited for the hunt. Her name was Sarina Gabina. She had blue eyes and shoulder-length, honey-colored hair, though most of it was covered by the straw hat she was wearing. She was new to Pallet Town and had moved there just a few weeks ago. Her mother had sent her to camp in the hope that she could make some friends there, but Sarina was too shy to talk to anybody. Leaf had attempted to start a conversation a few times, but even she couldn't get much response from Sarina. Unlike Ash, Gary, and Leaf, Sarina didn't have a clear goal in mind. Her mother had been a famous Rhyhorn racer but was now retired. It only took Sarina a few times on her mother's Rhyhorn to decide she didn't want to follow in her mother's footsteps. She was always getting thrown off the first few seconds. So what could she do with her life? Hey, this is going to be a piece of cake. Everyone knows I'm going to win, Gary said in an arrogant tone, causing the other kids to glare at him. Oh yeah, Gary, you might have beaten us at some of the other events, but you won't win this time. I can't wait to see that smirk wipe off your face. Ash snarled to him. This caused Gary to turn his attention to Ash now. Leaf sighed in exasperation and shook her head. Here came another one of their arguments. She didn't even attempt to try to stop it. A fight between Gary and Ash was a daily occurrence. Oh yeah, Ashy boy. Everyone here knows that you're a loser. Why don't you just go back to your cabin and sit this one out? It will save you the embarrassment of losing to me again, Gary shot back. There were few things in the world that made Ash angry, but Gary Oak was one of them. Just you wait, Gary. I'm going to win this time, and then I'll beat you at everything else, too. Ash shouted. The two boys then butted heads and growled at each other, silently daring the other to give in first. Leaf rolled her eyes while some of the other kids began to form a circle around the two, eager to see the fight. Sarina was outside the circle and just quietly watched. That was when the camp counselor decided to intervene. All right, break it up you two. You don't want me to have to call your parents, do you? The two boys then gave each other one last glare before walking back to their respective places in line. Ash's ears burned as he stood next to Leaf. She was watching him with a frown, and Ash knew he had let Gary get to him again. Leaf then leaned over towards Ash and whispered, Ash, you are one of the nicest boys I know. You shouldn't let Gary get to you like that. You know he is just trying to make you mad. Ash then sighed. Thanks, Leaf. I just wish I could beat Gary at something to prove that he isn't as great as he thinks he is. Alright, so does everyone understand the rules? The camp counselor asked later, receiving a nod from all the kids. Remember, no teaming up. You are to do this alone. There will be counselors at various points around the camp to make sure you don't get lost. The first one to find all the items will be declared the winner of the scavenger hunt. Most importantly, have fun. Are you ready? All the kids were then handed a basket and a list of things to find. Ash, Gary, Leaf, and the other kids had determined looks on their faces, all except Sarina. She gave an unsure look at the list of things to find, going through them in her mind. How could she succeed at this event? This required her to all over the camp. She barely knew the grounds at all, however. Sarina spent most of her time in the cabins by herself. She had barely even gotten through the others. She didn't even want to come to this camp in the first place. Are you excited for this? Ash suddenly asked Sarina. Sarina almost leaped in surprise at Ash's voice. She slowly turned and saw he was giving her a bright smile. The honey blonde-haired girl averted her eyes away from Ash and shyly hid her face. Great. Another person was attempting to be nice to her, but here she was, not even trying to continue the conversation. Sarina couldn't help but think the boy had a nice smile, though. Not understanding Sarina's shyness, Ash shrugged and turned back to the counselor. On your mark, get set, go. The camp counselor yelled while pumping his fist into the air. The kids then all ran off into different directions, determined to beat one another at the scavenger hunt. Well, almost everyone. Sarina watched everyone speed away in different directions. She gave one last look at the list before she sighed. The camp counselor noticed Sarina's hesitation and went over to her. He then leaned over so he was more eye level with her. What's wrong? Are you okay? He asked. Sarina stared up into the concerned face of the counselor. She was seriously considering to ask him if it would be alright to skip this event. She already knew she wasn't going to win. She would be lucky if she found anything at all. Still, Sarina doubted the camp counselor would let her skip the event unless she was sick or injured, and Sarina was none of those. Instead, Sarina pulled the straw hat over her face and turned beet red. I'm fine, she squeaked. With that, Sarina placed the scavenger hunt map into her basket and slowly walked off. Sarina figured she could probably find a nice spot in the woods and sit by a tree until the camp counselors announced the events were over. Still, if she did that, she would look quite pathetic if the other kids found out she didn't collect anything, and the last thing Sarina wanted was to draw attention to herself like that. Great. It looked like she was going to have to do this scavenger hunt whether she wanted to or not. Sarina was walking through the forest beside the camp by herself. It was already 20 minutes into the scavenger hunt, and she had only found a couple of items on the list. She then let out a sigh. She hoped she would at least be able to get through this event. It was going to be the last major one at the camp since it was the last day, and she hadn't made a single friend yet. Aside from Leaf and Ash just now, no one had really attempted to talk to her. She hated being the new kid and wished she wasn't so shy to make new friends. Sarina then heard a rustling in the bush. She stopped and eyed the bush. Hello, is anybody in there? She asked timidly. There was no response. Hello, she asked again. There was still no response. Sarina slowly started walking towards the bush and was about to peek when all of a sudden, a polywag jumped out of the bush with a cry. Sarina was so startled that she tripped and fell backwards, dropping her list and the basket of items. Her knee hit banged against a tree stump quite hard on her way down. OWWW. Sarina cried as she landed. The polywag just looked at her and waddled off into another part of the forest. Sarina had scraped her knee pretty badly when she fell, and it really hurt. She couldn't even stand up. Sarina then began to cry. Where were the camp counselors at? They were supposed to be at every area. Sarina knew something like this was going to happen. I didn't even want to come to camp in the first place, Sarina whimpered in between tears. I wish someone would come to help me. Mama aaaaa. Just then, she heard more rustling from the bushes. She hoped it was one of the counselors, but what if it wasn't? What if it was another Pokémon, only more dangerous than a Poliwag? Sarina stared fearfully at the bush until a raven-haired boy emerged from it. She sighed with relief that it was just one of the campers. They hadn't been formally introduced, but she believed he was called Ash Ketchum, the boy who tried to speak to her right before the event began. He was still clearly looking for items in the scavenger hunt. Where is it? Ash muttered to himself. He then noticed Sarina. Ash then walked up to Sarina and gave her a warm smile. Hi, you're that girl from earlier. My name is Ash Ketchum. What's yours? I'm Sarina, she said timidly. Ash gave his name to her, so she figured it was only polite to do the same even though she was still weary of him. Why are you on the ground, Sarina? The raven-haired boy asked. I fell, and now my leg hurts, Sarina said, grimacing at the pain. That's okay, I'll help you, Ash said as he set down his things. He then bent down and pulled a blue cloth out of his shorts pocket. Sarina watched him as he began to tie the cloth over her leg. Sarina blinked in surprise as she watched Ash secure the cloth. He was actually helping her. This is really nice of him, Sarina thought to herself. Ash could have just ran to get help, which would have left her alone again, but he was fixing it himself. Once Ash was done, he began to wave his hands over the wound. I'll say a good luck charm really quick. Pain, pain, go away, he chanted. Despite how silly it sounded, Sarina thought that it was really sweet. Sarina saw Ash grinning at her, and Sarina actually gave Ash a small smile of her own. The young girl even felt a slight tinge of red on her cheeks. She quickly looked away so he wouldn't notice. Thank you, Ash, Sarina said gratefully. No problem, can you stand? Ash asked her. She then began to try, but the pain forced her back down. It's no use. My leg hurts too bad, she cried. Never give up until the end, Ash told her as he stood up and offered Sarina his hand. Sarina stared at the open gesture for a moment before she slowly slipped her hand into Ash's. He then gave a hard tug and pulled Sarina to her feet, but he ended up pulling a little too hard. This caused Sarina to fall against Ash. It looked just like they were giving each other a hug. Sarina stood in total surprise for a moment as she leaned against Ash and felt her cheeks go red again. She then pulled away and stared at Ash with wide eyes. He didn't appear to notice the type of state they were in and instead gave Sarina a bright smile. You stood, Ash said happily before he gave her a grin. Come on, let's head back to the camp. With that, he began to lead Sarina by hand out of the forest. Sarina turned around and noticed that Ash's basket of items and her own spilled ones were still behind them. But what about your things for the scavenger hunt? Sarina asked. That doesn't matter right now. What matters is getting you back safely, Ash told her with a smile as he continued to lead her by the hand. Sarina continued to silently follow Ash out of the forest. He was being so nice to her, and they didn't even know each other. First, he tied up her wound, helped her stand, and was completely dropping the scavenger hunt to make sure that she was safely led out of the forest. Sarina would say that he was probably the nicest boy she had ever met. So do you live in Pallet Town? Ash asked her. Yes, my mama and I just moved here a few weeks ago, she replied. Well, that's great. Once camp is over, I can come over to see you at your house, and we can play together. I'll also introduce you to some of my friends, Ash said enthusiastically. What? He was actually going to do that? That would be really nice. Thank you, Ash, Sarina said and finally managed a genuine smile. She was so surprised at how kind Ash was. He was even offering to come see her once camp was over and be her friend. You bet. Hey, look, we've reached the end of the forest. Let's get you to the nurse's office to make sure you're okay, Ash said as he pointed to the exit. Then together they walked out of the forest, hand in hand. It came as no surprise to anyone that Gary Oak had become the victor of the scavenger hunt. He didn't waste any time bragging to everybody about how he knew he would win and that he was the greatest ever, especially to Ash. Normally, Ash would have gotten angry and given a retort to Gary, but at the moment, he wasn't bothered by Gary's taunting. He was just glad he was able to help Sarina when she was in trouble. XXX. How is she, Ms. Nurse? Ash asked after the nurse had examined Sarina's scrape. The nurse then turned to Ash and gave him a smile. Sarina was sitting on a chair with her leg in a more appropriate bandage. She will be just fine, young man. It was only a scrape and will heal completely in a few days, the nurse told him kindly. You were very smart to tie that cloth around her scrape until you could get help for her. She must be lucky to have a friend like you. That's great, Ash exclaimed and turned to Sarina. See, the nurse said you will be just fine. You will be feeling great again in no time. Why yeah, that's great, Sarina replied, feeling the red return to her cheeks. Why did she keep getting so flustered around Ash? Oh, no, Sarina, your face is getting red. You aren't getting a fever, are you? Ash asked with worry. This caused Sarina to become even redder than she already was. The nurse, however, gave a small chuckle. She knew an embarrassed face when she saw one, so she didn't want Sarina to get any more uncomfortable, so she came to the rescue. Don't worry, Ash. Sarina isn't getting a fever at all. She'll be just fine. Why don't you go on back outside while I finish up in here? She told him with a smile. Okay, Ash replied as he turned around and headed for the door. Before he left, he turned to Sarina and gave her a thumbs up. Hey, Sarina, let's play together real soon. With that, he walked out of the nurse's office, leaving Sarina and the nurse alone. Sarina still had the blue cloth Ash had given her and brought it close to her chest. As she watched the young boy go, she felt a wave of sadness wash over her. She hoped she would be able to see Ash again soon. XXX. Hey, Ashy boy, are you even listening to me? I beat you again, Gary exclaimed as he tried to get some type of rise out of Ash. Ash, however, wasn't giving any type of pouting or angry look as usual. Instead, to Gary's surprise, Ash gave him a smile. Alright, Gary, good job. You beat me this time, but you just wait until next time, Ash responded. Gary just stared at Ash, dumbfounded. What? Ash was actually blowing off his taunts. What was he playing at? Gary examined Ash's face for a moment as he tried to find any sort of anger or jealousy. There was nothing like that, just neutrality. This left Gary extremely confused. He had choice but to give up taunting Ash for now. Loser, Gary mumbled and walked away with his hands in his pockets. Leaf then walked up to Ash. Wow, Ash, I've never seen you handle Gary's taunting like that, she said in approval. Yeah, I guess I'm just happy because I was able to help someone and make a friend today, Ash replied. Really? Who is it? Leaf asked him curiously. Her name is Sarina. She had hurt her leg during the scavenger hunt. I found her and helped her out. It turns out she lives in Pallet Town, too, Ash told her. Oh yeah, I remember Sarina, Leaf recalled. I had tried to talk to her a few times here at camp, but she never said much back. Yeah, she didn't say a lot to me, either, at first, Ash replied. Once I helped her, we got to talk for a little bit. I think she's really nice. Leaf then smiled at Ash and giggled. Hee, that's always what I've liked about you, Ash. You can care about others and can get along with anyone. Well, except for Gary. I think you'll be a great Pokémon trainer in the future. Thanks, Leaf. I'm going to shout it out right now. Ash responded and then turned toward the sky. He then cupped his hands over his mouth, and shouted out, Look out, world. Ash Ketchum is coming before you know it. I'm going to be the greatest Pokémon Master ever. Little did Ash know that Sarina was watching him from the window of the nurse's office and heard the words he had shouted. So, he wanted to be a Pokémon trainer. The way Ash said that made him sound so confident and so sure of himself. It made Sarina want to be more like him. He was young just like her and they just met, but he was already impacting her life so much. Sarina wanted to get to know him better. Ash really is something, Sarina thought to herself. She had a feeling that he was going to be a big part of her life from now on. Maybe coming to the summer camp wasn't such a bad thing, after all. Chapter 2, Meeting the Starters. It was late at night in Pallet Town. Stores had closed hours ago, and most people had already gone to sleep for the night. There were few sounds at this time to disturb anyone in the rural community. It was very tranquil and peaceful. There was still one light on in Pallet Town, however. It showed from the second-story window from the bedroom of a two-story house. The said bedroom belonged to Ash Ketchum. It had been 3 years since he was at Pallet Town summer camp. Now, he was 10 years of age, and tomorrow would be the day he would finally begin his journey to be a Pokémon Master. It had been the only thing he had thought about the entire day. He currently had the television turned on to a Pokémon battle between a Gengar and Nidorino. Gengar was of the Ghost Poison type Pokémon and was dark purple in color with its face in a mischievous grin. It had protrusions coming from its back that resembled spikes. Nidorino was a Poison type Pokémon and was dark pink and resembled a large rabbit. It had a large horn protruding from its forehead. The Pokémon belonged to members of the Elite Four themselves. Gengar belonged to Agatha, and Nidorino belonged to Bruno. Despite the intensity of the battle, Ash wasn't paying it much mind. He was too focused on his journey for tomorrow. Ash's mother had just bought him some new clothes for his journey earlier that day, which he was currently trying on. They consisted of a plain black, short-sleeved shirt with a pair of blue jeans. Over the black shirt he had on a blue jacket with white short sleeves which he wore open. On his hands were a pair of black, fingerless gloves with green edgings. He was also wearing his favorite red and white hat. It was the official Pokémon League hat. Ash claimed he had to send in about 1 million postcards to win it, which made it very special to him. Alright, tomorrow is finally the day, Ash said to himself. My dream to become a Pokémon Master is going to begin. He then picked up an alarm clock in the shape of a Pokeball and held it out in front of him. I will be the very best like no one ever was. That is what I. Ash, get to bed. The sudden appearance of Delia Ketchum, his mother, in the doorway and her shout startled Ash so much that he threw the alarm clock across the room. Luckily, Delia caught it. It then opened up and revealed a mechanical Pidgey that was cuckooing. Ash's mother was a woman in her late 30s with brown eyes and long brown hair which was tied into a ponytail. She was currently wearing her night robe. It's late, Ash, Delia continued. Tomorrow is the day you start your Pokémon journey. You need your rest so you don't oversleep and get a late start. I know, Mum. I'm just so excited for tomorrow that I'm not tired. I'll go to bed real soon, though. I promise, Ash replied. Fine. You have 10 more minutes, and then I want to see you in bed, young man, Delia told him with her hands on her hips. She then walked over to the television and set down his Pidgey clock before she changed the channel. In the meantime, at least watch something a little more educational. With that, Delia walked out of the room. Ash turned to the television. The channel she had changed it to featured Professor Oak discussing the 3 starter Pokémon that trainers could choose from. They consisted of Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle. Trainers may only choose one, and each one had their own strengths and weaknesses that would serve trainers differently depending on the circumstance. For all you future Pokémon trainers out there, Professor Oak began, I'd like to present to you the starter Pokémon. They are Bulbasaur, the grass type, Charmander, the fire type, and Squirtle, the water type. One of these 3 powerful Pokémon await you and will be your loyal companions, but remember, Pokémon are also your friends. Perhaps you will choose Bulbasaur, whose razor-sharp leaves and vines can cut through the thickest forest. Maybe Charmander, whose strong body is sure to be useful in tough climates, or perhaps Squirtle is more to your liking, who can get you across any body of water. They all look so good. It will be a really tough choice, Ash thought. He did know that whomever he chose would be the best friend Ash could ask for. He couldn't wait to meet his future partner tomorrow. Elsewhere in Pallet Town, just a few houses down, a girl with honey blonde hair was already in bed. Like Ash, however, she was unable to get to sleep. The girl was Sarina Gabiner. She was no longer the super shy girl she was when she first moved to Pallet Town. She had fit into the Pallet Town crew just fine in the past 3 years. She and Leaf had become best friends in that time and did all sorts of things together, whether it be watching movies, talking about the latest thing, or discussing whether Gary or Ash was more clueless. They usually agreed that it was Ash. Sarina valued her friendship with Leaf because there were some things a girl could just never discuss with a boy. Sarina and Gary were able to get along most of the time, though they did argue sometimes, but nowhere near the intensity or as often as Gary and Ash did. Those two were still fierce rivals and competed at just about everything. Though Gary wasn't as much of a jerk as he used to be and could even be pretty nice sometimes, he could never seem to let go of that arrogant attitude of his. That was what Sarina, as well Ash and Leaf, couldn't stand about him. Then there was Ash. Ever since that day at summer camp when he helped her, she had developed a secret crush on Ash. Well, it wasn't really a secret as the only person who didn't seem to know about it was Ash himself. Sarina had never known anyone as kind as Ash Ketchum. Just as he promised, he came over to play with her after summer camp and had been the one to properly introduce her to Leaf and Gary. She and Ash had played together all the time and always had a blast. She could see him for only a minute and be happy the rest of the day. He had also been the one to get her the hat she loves to wear now. XXX. Happy birthday, Sarina, Ash said with a smile as he handed her the present. It was Sarina's 10th birthday. Sarina's mother, Grace, was throwing a birthday party at her house and invited Ash, Leaf, and Gary. Sarina had already opened all of her presents except for Ash's. Thank you, Ash, Sarina replied gratefully as she took the present. Sarina then sat down as she began to unwrap it. She couldn't wait to see what her crush had given her. Once she unwrapped it, it unveiled a medium-sized box. She opened the box, and inside was a pink hat with a black horizontal stripe which ran across it and had a pink brim. I hope you like it, Sarina, Ash said a little shyly and rubbed the back of his neck. I know I'm not very good with fashion, but I saw that hat in the store the other day and thought you might look good in it, so. Oh, Ash, I love it, Sarina exclaimed. She then jumped up and gave Ash a great big hug which actually caused him to redden slightly. That's great, I'm glad, he said a little nervously. I'm going to try it on right now. Sarina beamed. She then placed the hat on her head and gave a wink and a smile. How do I look? She asked everyone. Great, Leaf exclaimed. Very stylish. Meh, it looks okay, Gary shrugged, but Leaf kicked him in the leg. Gary glared at her before he turned back to Sarina. Yeah, you look great, he said. Sarina chuckled before she turned back to Ash. Thanks again, Ash. I'm going to wear it every day. Oh, haha, you're welcome, Ash replied. XXX. True to her word, ever since Ash had given her the hat, she had worn it every day. It was stylish and went well with her outfits, but the best part was that it was a gift from Ash. Her birthday had been a few months ago, and tomorrow was the day she would begin her Pokémon journey as well. The only problem was she had no idea what her goal would be. Ash, Gary, and Leaf had known what they had wanted to do for a long time. Why couldn't she decide what her goal was? She could only hope that by going on this journey that she would find something that caught her interest and pursue it. Furthermore, she didn't want to go on this journey by herself. Sarina believed journeys were always better with more than one person. You would always have someone looking out for you in case something happened, and it was, of course, more fun to have someone else to talk to. She hoped Ash, Leaf, or even Gary, okay, maybe not Gary, would accept her to accompany them. All these thoughts were swimming through her head, and she just couldn't get to sleep. Sarina gave a sigh. This was going to be a long night. Today is finally the day, Ash thought as finished tying his tennis shoes. It was the next morning, and he had been waiting for this moment a long time. Ash was pumped. He ran out of his room, down the stairs, and then burst into the kitchen. His mother, Delia, had just finished cooking him a big breakfast. Ash, this is the last meal I'm going to cook for you in a while, so I hope you're hungry. I made plenty, Delia said as set the plate of food down on the table. Ash looked hungrily at the plate of food in front of him. I consisted of a stack of pancakes and plenty of bacon on the side. Thanks, Mum, Ash said as he began to dig in. It all tasted so good. He really would miss his mum's cooking while he was gone. Oh, my little baby is going on his Pokémon journey. You're growing up so fast, Delia said as she began to tear up as Ash finished his breakfast. Mum, Ash muttered in an embarrassed tone, but Delia ignored it. Now, Professor Oak is waiting for you, Ash. You should go ahead to the lab. You don't want to be late, do you? Delia asked him. It was then that Ash looked at the clock. He only had 10 minutes until he was supposed to be at Professor Oak's lab. Oh, no, I'm running late, Ash exclaimed as he dashed out of the house. Make sure to stop by the house again before you leave, Delia called after him. Okay, Ash shouted back. Sarina, hurry up, or you'll be late. Grace, Sarina's mother, called out upstairs to her daughter. I know, I can't figure out what to wear, though, Sarina yelled back. Just pick something, Grace said in exasperation. Sarina then came downstairs, still in her pink pajamas. I can't decide between these two blouses. What do you think? Sarina asked, holding up the two blouses for her mother to see. One was a black blouse with a white collar. The other was pretty similar in design but was a different color. It was a light grey color with a black collar. Her mother mused as she examined them before she made a decision. I like the light grey one with the black collar. All right, that settles it, the black blouse it is. Sarina cried with delight as she ran back upstairs to her room to change. Wait, you're going to choose the opposite of what I said. I thought you wanted my opinion, Grace said with confusion as she watched her daughter go back up the stairs. Sarina then turned around and let out a giggle and a wink. The outfit that you chose would definitely be the less fashionable one, she replied, causing Grace to roll her eyes. Fine, just hurry up and change, Grace advised and looked at her watch. Professor Oak said he wanted all of you there by 10 o'clock, and it's already 9:45. About 2 minutes later, Sarina came down in her clothes. Aside from the black blouse with the white collar, her outfit consisted of a pink skirt that went slightly above her knees, black thigh-high socks, solid black shoes, and of course, the pink hat that Ash had given her. Do I look okay, Mum? She asked. You look fine. Now go. Just make sure after you get your Pokémon to come back here to grab your things, Grace urged. Okay, bye, Mum. Love you, Sarina said with a wave as she ran out the door. Sarina also gave a quick goodbye to her mother's Rhyhorn that was walking around in the front yard. Then she turned the corner and dashed down the road to Professor Oak's lab. As Grace watched her daughter go, she shook her head and sighed. She knew that Sarina didn't want to do Rhyhorn racing for the rest of her life, and that was fine. She just wished her daughter would find a goal, trainer, coordinator, breeder, watcher, connoisseur, anything. Grace actually had encouraged her daughter to stay at home for a while until she could find out what she wanted to do, but Sarina had insisted so strongly on leaving this year, probably because Ash was leaving, that her mother had to give in. Grace then turned to head to the kitchen. Sarina is really into fashion. Maybe she could be a Pokémon fashion designer. It's the only other thing I can think of, she thought. Sarina continued to hurry along the path to Professor Oak's lab. She would be really embarrassed to be late on her first day of getting a Pokémon. She knew that if she continued to run, she should be able to make it on time. As she was running, she came to an intersection and caught sight of Ash coming from the other side, also running. At least she wasn't the only one pressed for time. Ash, hi, Sarina said in between breaths as she turned the corner to Professor Oak's lab. Hi, Sarina, Ash replied, also in between breaths as he turned the corner. They continued to run side by side. They were almost there. They ran up the steps and burst through the door just before the clock struck 10. Both of them were panting heavily. Gary and Leaf were already there and were waiting for Ash and Sarina. Both of them were geared up for their Pokémon journey, too. Gary had on a long-sleeved purple shirt and dark blue pants. He also wore brown boots and a green necklace. Leaf was wearing a sky blue sleeveless shirt, a red skirt, knee-high light blue socks, white tennis shoes, and a white hat with red stripes and half Pokeball symbol on it. Behind them stood Professor Samuel Oak himself. He was an older man in his early 60s. He was of average size and build for an adult and had neatly combed grey hair and thick, black, bushy eyebrows. He wore a white lab coat over a red polo shirt securely tucked into khaki pants with a belt. Well, it seems all of you are here on time, Professor Oak commented, giving the four a smile. I know all of you are very excited. A whole new adventure awaits you all. It's the incredible world of Pokémon. Your journey with your partner Pokémon will have many fun times, but also there may be dangerous times as well. If it ever comes to that, you must use your Pokémon to protect you. Always remember this, though. Your Pokémon are not just there to protect you from danger, they are also your friends and partners. Do you understand? All four nodded their heads, each with different thoughts going through their head. This is it. I can't wait. I'm gonna be the very best. Ash thought. Here it is. I hope I'm ready, Sarina thought. This is great. I can't wait to see all the different Pokémon. Leaf thought. Hey, it's about time. Now the world will see what a real Pokémon trainer looks like, Gary thought. Very well. In that case, please follow me to the other room to meet your first Pokémon, Professor Oak said. He then turned around and began walking into the main part of the lab, the four soon-to-be trainers following him. Professor Oak led them into a large room with a large computer on one side. In the center of the room was a circular table with 3 Pokeballs sitting on top of it. Other than that, the room was pretty bare. Here they are. One of these will become your very first Pokémon, Professor Oak stated, gesturing to the Pokeballs on the table. One of the Pokeballs contains Bulbasaur, the Grass-type Pokémon. One contains Charmander, the Fire-type Pokémon, and the other contains Squirtle, the Water-type Pokémon. Choose your Pokémon wisely. Who would like to go first? Ash, always the gentleman, said, ladies first, as they say, causing both Sarina and Leaf to smile at him. Gary just shrugged. Whatever. Those two can go first if they want. It's not like it makes a difference. I'll be the best no matter which one I have. Then it's settled, Professor Oak stated with a nod. Sarina, Leaf, please go ahead and pick your Pokémon. Leaf walked up to the table first. She had known which Pokémon she wanted from the very beginning. I like all the Pokémon here, but if I had to choose one, it would be Bulbasaur. So come on out, she said as she grabbed the Pokeball and pushed the center button to open it. A beam of white light shot out of the Pokeball until it materialized into a small grayish-green dinosaur-like Pokémon with a large green bulb on its back. Bulbasaur looked around at all of its surroundings before its eyes settled on Leaf, its new trainer. Leaf knelt down to be more eye level with it. You're so cute, she exclaimed. Would you like to travel with me, Bulbasaur? Bulbasaur studied Leaf for a moment before smiling and cried, Bulbasaur, signaling that it approved. It figures you would choose a grass-type Pokémon since your name is Leaf, Gary smirked, causing Leaf to stick her tongue out at him. Haha, very funny, she said sarcastically. Sarina, why don't you go ahead and choose your next Pokémon? Professor Oak suggested. Go on, Sarina. I'm really excited to see which Pokémon you get, Ash said, giving her a thumbs up. Sarina smiled back at Ash and felt herself blush a bit, but quickly hid it from the others. She then walked up to the table and studied the remaining 2 Pokeballs. The one she chose would be her partner for life. She really had to make sure she chose the right one. Squirtle or Charmander. Sarina took a deep breath as she made her decision. Charmander, I choose you, Sarina said as she opened the Pokeball to reveal Charmander. It was an orange salamander Pokémon that stood on 2 legs. It had a flame burning at the end of its tail. Char, char, it cried as it ran up and hugged Sarina's legs. Sarina instantly liked it. Ooh, it's so cute. Leaf squealed, jumping up and down, causing Sarina, Ash, and Professor Oak to laugh. Gary just rolled his eyes and snorted. Annoying girl, he thought. Well, you certainly are friendly, aren't you? Sarina said as she picked up Charmander and held it out in front of her. Would you like to come along with me? Charmander nodded enthusiastically. It then reached out and took Sarina's hat and placed it on its head before it winked. It was clearly a female Charmander. Ha ha ha, do you like my hat? Sarina giggled as she took it back. Charmander replied and nodded again. I've got a nickname for you, Charmander, Sarina began. How about I call you Charla? Charmander. It agreed and nodded again. Sarina smiled. She believed she had made the right choice for her Pokémon. She just secretly hoped she was good enough for the friendly Pokémon considering she didn't know what she wanted to do yet. Gary decided he would go next. He walked up to the table and looked at the remaining Pokéball. Well, I guess that leaves this one for me, he said as he grabbed the Pokéball and opened it. Come out, Squirtle. The Pokéball opened to reveal Squirtle. It was a small, light blue turtle Pokémon that stood on two legs and had a curly tail coming out of its shell. It stood there with its arms crossed and had a confident expression on its face. Hey, you look like a tough guy. Why don't you travel with me, Squirtle? We'll conquer anyone in our path. Soon, everyone will know our name. Gary offered as he looked down at Squirtle. Squirtle, it responded. Gary and Squirtle both began to laugh arrogantly. Everyone else in the room sweat dropped. Those two were just alike. I guess that leaves me, Ash said as he went to the table. It was then that he noticed something very wrong. There were only 3 Pokeballs that were on the table and 4 trainers. There weren't any Pokemon left. Everyone else in the room realized this, too, as they got nervous expressions on their faces. Ah, Professor Oak, you did have at least 4 Pokemon prepared for us, right? There is at least one more Pokemon for me, isn't there? Ash asked hopefully. Sarina, Leaf, and Gary looked at Professor Oak. They were wondering the same thing. Professor Oak began to rub the back of his neck. Well, there is one other Pokemon for me to give. It is rather different, however. Are you sure you want it? He asked with an unsure expression. Definitely. I'll take it, Ash said with no hesitation. If you are sure, Professor Oak said as he pushed a button on the side of the table. The center of the table opened up, and a small platform rose out of the opening. On top of the platform was a Pokeball with a small lightning bolt on it. Professor Oak then picked up the Pokeball and gave Ash a serious expression. Okay, Ash, this Pokemon has had bad experiences with humans in the past. It's very distrustful with humans as a result. I had to work very hard for it to even let me come near it. I am trusting you to give this Pokemon the love and friendship it deserves. Will you do that? I will, Professor. You can count on me. This Pokemon and I will become the best of friends. Ash replied with a smile. Very well, Ash. Here you go. I must ask everyone else to stand back a few feet so as not to startle it, Professor Oak said as he gave Ash the Pokeball. Despite the temptation to get as close of a look as possible, the other kids obeyed and stepped back a few feet. Ash then looked to the Pokeball in his hand. Whichever Pokemon was in this Pokeball would become his lifelong partner. Whatever this Pokemon had gone through, Ash would help it overcome it and be the best friend the Pokemon could ask for. Here we go, Ash thought as he opened the Pokeball. The white beam shot out of the Pokeball and landed on the table as it began to take shape. The kids all waited anxiously to see what kind of Pokemon would come out of the Pokeball. The shape the beam was becoming clearer, and it was soon obvious to everyone that it wasn't going to be a Charmander, Bulbasaur, or Squirtle that would come out. The beam finally stopped shooting as the Pokemon began to appear. The Pokemon was yellow in color and looked like a mouse. It had pointy ears that were tipped with black and one red circle on each of its cheeks. It also had a lightning bolt-shaped tail. It was a Pikachu. Fanfiction.net, Justin, Community. Forum, v. More. The Road to be a Pokémon Master, Kanto Arc by Fanaticleg.io6. Games Pokémon Rated, T, English, Adventure and Romance, Ash K. Satoshi, Sarina Pikachu, Words, 645k+, Faves, 3k+, Follows, 2k+, Published, January 30, 2014. Updated, October 11, 2016. 3587 Chapter 3, The Meeting of Lifelong Partners. Well, here is the next chapter as promised. Ash and Pikachu meet. As for what Sarina's goal is, you will just have to wait and see in a future chapter. Once again, thanks for all of the reviews and likes. I read them all. You guys are awesome. Disclaimer, I still don't own Pokémon. It still belongs to Nintendo, yep. Chapter 3, The Meeting of Lifelong Partners. Everyone stared at the Pokémon that had come out of the Pokeball. They certainly were not expecting a Pikachu to come out. In turn, Pikachu stared uncertainly at everyone around it. It didn't quite know what to make of the situation. What it did know was one raven-haired boy was standing a little too close for its liking, though. Ash was the first one to give any real reaction, and his face broke out into a wide grin. He then leaned forward to get a little closer. Hello, Pikachu. My name is Ash Ketchum. I heard that you had bad experiences with people and distrust them, but I promise you I'm not like that. I'm going to treat you the way you deserve to be treated. Will you give me a chance? Pikachu continued to stare at Ash. It didn't believe this kid for 1 second. It's heard that one before. It heard how people had said they would be nice to it, only to abuse it the first chance they got. Pikachu then promptly turned its back on Ash with a low-toned chew, to emphasize that it didn't want anything to do with they. Gary Oak then gave a smirk as he crossed his arms. What's the matter, Ashy boy? Can't you even make your first Pokémon trust you? I guess I can say that's to be expected. I don't know what Gramps was thinking trying to give you a Pikachu like that. Leaf and Sarina then glared at Gary. Ugh, Gary, you can be such a jerk sometimes. Let's see you try to become friends with it, Leaf defended. Gary shrugged. I'm only saying that Pikachu isn't for some run-off-the-mill rookie like Ash. You know he will be miserable with that thing. Ash decided he would try again. Don't listen to Gary, Pikachu. I personally think you are so great that you are the best of all. I couldn't be happier to receive you as my first Pokémon. Ash then reached out to try to give Pikachu a reassuring touch on its back. However, it proved to be a huge mistake. Wait, Ash, be careful, or, Professor Oak tried to warn, but it was too late. As soon as Pikachu felt Ash's hand against it, it let out a loud cry and gave off a powerful thundershock. The bolt engulfed Ash in electricity and caused the other people and Pokémon to hit the floor in an attempt to block the attack. Wow, that was a powerful thundershock, Ash mumbled, a little dazed once Pikachu finished. Ash, are you okay? Sarina asked worriedly as she and everyone else stood up again. Yeah, I think so, Ash muttered. Geez, Ash, watch what you're doing. That Pikachu is a danger to everyone. You need to get that thing back into its Pokeball before something worse happens. Gary exclaimed with an angry look on his face. I'm afraid I have to agree with Gary on this one, Ash. Let me put Pikachu back into its Pokeball, and I can try to find another Pokémon for you, Professor Oak said as he picked up Pikachu's Pokeball. Pikachu looked at the ball fearfully. It hated being inside Pokeballs. It just received freedom, and it was already going back in. No, wait, Professor. It's fine, Ash stepped in before he then turned to Pikachu. Sorry about that, Pikachu. I shouldn't have reached out and startled you like that. That was my fault. I'll try to be more careful from now on. Do you forgive me? That got Pikachu's attention. It was expecting Ash to hit it or at least be very angry and yell at it for shocking him, but he was doing just the opposite. He wasn't bothered by it at all and was even apologizing to it and wanted its forgiveness. Maybe this human wasn't as bad as it originally thought. Pikachu still didn't trust Ash, but it decided to give him a break. It turned around to face Ash and nodded its head, signaling it at least forgave Ash. That's great. Thanks, Pikachu, Ash replied gratefully before he continued. Maybe we could start over. I really would like to be the trainer and friend to a great Pokémon like you. Just give me one day. If you decide you don't want anything to do with me after that, you can go, and I won't try to stop you. What do you say? Want to give this partnership a chance? Ash then extended his hand to Pikachu in a gesture of friendship, but Pikachu hesitated. Surely Ash didn't expect it to be buddies with him just because he apologized and was forgiven. On the other hand, he did seem genuine and said that it could leave after a day with no questions asked if it didn't like him. After giving it some thought, Pikachu decided it could give Ash a single chance. It didn't accept Ash's hand, but it still nodded its head. Pikachu then curled its hands into fists and sparked its cheeks, letting Ash know that it still had its guard up. Taking the hint, Ash decided Pikachu still wasn't ready for him to be too close to it yet unless he wanted to get another thundershock, but that still didn't stop Ash from grinning broadly. Thanks, Pikachu. I understand. I won't try to touch you anymore until you are ready. In the meantime, would you please get inside the Pokeball? I want to take you to my house to introduce you to my mum, Ash requested. Piker, Pikachu. Pikachu cried while it frantically shook its head and waved its arms back and forth. It couldn't stand being in Pokeballs, and it would be darned if this kid thought he could get it to go back inside of one. Oh, you don't like Pokeballs, Pikachu? Ash asked in concern. Pikachu shook its head again. It then crouched down in a tight ball and closed its eyes, letting Ash know that it thought Pokeballs were cramped and dark, which scared it. If that's the case, Pikachu, then you don't have to go in. You can just stay outside and walk beside me. How does that sound? Ash amended and gave Pikachu a smile. Pikachu was actually impressed. Ash was even not making it get into a Pokeball. This kid was just full of surprises. Maybe it wasn't going to be so bad after all. Are you kidding me? Ash, if you can't get that thing to even get inside of its Pokeball, then it's going to walk all over you. Keep that up, and pretty soon it will be the Pikachu that's training you. Gary said, glaring at Ash. Now, Gary. That remark was uncalled for, Professor Oak scolded before he turned to Ash. I do agree with what Gary said on one point, however. Are you sure having Pikachu outside the Pokeball is a good idea? If Pikachu doesn't want to be in a Pokeball, then it doesn't have to, Ash replied firmly. Professor Oak studied Ash carefully. He had his doubts, but perhaps giving Ash this Pikachu was the right move, after all. He knew how much Ash cared for Pokémon and had always sensed something special in the boy. He had no doubt that these two would accomplish many great things together. Sarina was thinking likewise. She was super lucky that she got a Pokémon as friendly as Charla. If she had wound up with Pikachu, she didn't think she could handle it. Ash, on the other hand, was so forgiving and never gave up. Those were just a couple of the many qualities that she liked about him. Well, Ash, I will trust your judgment, Professor Oak relented before he turned towards the table and pushed another button on it. I would like to go ahead and give you all your Pokédexes now. The platform that had Pikachu's Pokeball on it lowered back into the table. It was soon replaced as a different platform rose out. On it were 4 red, rectangular devices about the size of a calculator with many different buttons and a small screen. Professor Oak picked up the machines and handed one to each of the 4 trainers. These devices are your Pokédexes. They will be used to record and give you any information about the Pokémon you may encounter on your journey. As soon as you see one you haven't come across yet, make sure to open up the Pokédex to get its information. I have spent almost my whole adult life studying Pokémon, but I'm getting on in years and can't do field research like I used to. If you manage to fill up the Pokédex with every known Pokémon, I will have a special award for you. The 4 kids nodded, signifying they understood, especially Leaf. Hey, Gramps, if we are done here, I'd like to go ahead and start my journey. My cheerleaders are waiting in the car, Gary spoke up, returning Squirtle to its Pokeball. Wait a second, Gary. You have cheerleaders, Ash exclaimed. Of course, Ash. They're going to follow me around and see what a real trainer from Pallet Town is like. Not that I would expect you to have any fans, except for those 2, Gary sneered and gestured to Leaf and Sarina with his thumb, causing them both to blush. Seeing Ash's angry expression, Gary's sneer turned into a genuine smile. Hey, I was just kidding, Ashy boy. Despite the things I said, I really do wish you luck in your journey and training that Pikachu. Just at least try to keep up with me, he said. Yeah, thanks, Gary. You, too, Ash replied, rather surprised that his biggest rival was actually wishing him luck. Gary then turned to Leaf and Sarina. The same goes for you too, also. Leaf, as much as you love to explore, I believe you'll have no trouble filling up that Pokédex. Sarina, I expect to see amazing things from you, too. You will be a great Pokémon trainer and be ready for the Indigo League in no time. Yeah, thanks, Gary, Sarina said nervously. Only her mother and Leaf knew that Sarina hadn't chosen her goal yet. Sure, she liked Pokémon battles, but she still couldn't understand why so many people thought she was going to compete in the Indigo League over everything else. Gary then turned to leave. Well, I'm out of here. Hey, Gramps, tell my family I said bye. I'll give 'em a call when I get to Viridian. Then, with a small wave, he walked out of the room. We should probably be leaving as well. I promised my mum that I would stop by before I left, Leaf suggested before she turned to Bulbasaur. Are you ready, Bulbasaur? The grass Pokémon nodded in response. It was ready for adventure just like its trainer. Yeah, I have to go by my house also, Sarina spoke up. Alright, let's all walk back together, Ash suggested and then turned to Pikachu. Hey, Pikachu, I'm going home to introduce you to my mum. I promise you that she isn't a bad person. Are you ready? Pikachu pondered on that for just a moment. The boy seemed okay so far, so that must mean his mum can't be that bad of a person either. Piker, it replied, nodding its head. Okay, let's go, Ash said enthusiastically as he pumped his fist into the air. As the trio and their Pokémon left the room, they waved goodbye to Professor Oak. Take care of yourselves, you hear? Keep in touch, the professor called after them. We will, they answered. As they neared the exit to the lab, Ash turned to Leaf and Sarina. Do you two think it's true what Gary said about having cheerleaders in a car? He questioned. He had to be bluffing. You know how cocky he can get. No 10-year-old should be able to have their own car and personal fan club just like that, Sarina answered. Once they opened the door, they were met with a whole bunch of noise and cheering. On the side of the road in front of Professor Oak's lab, they saw at least a dozen cheerleaders, complete with the uniform, who were chanting Gary's name again and again. There were also at least 100 fellow residents of Pallet Town in a line cheering just as hard. Beside them, parked on the side of the road, was a flashy red convertible. Gary, Gary, he's the best, Gary, Gary, beats the rest. They cheered as Gary passed them and got in the car. As soon as he was in, all the cheerleaders piled in behind him, which made a really tight fit. The cheerleader that would be driving the car then turned it on and sped off down the road. Some of the people in the crowd dispersed while others chased after the vehicle. Ash, Sarina, Leaf, and their Pokémon stood dumbfounded for a moment before sweat dropped. Never mind, Sarina mumbled. Hey, Mum, I'm back, Ash called as he and Pikachu entered his house. I'm in the kitchen, sweetie. I'm just finishing up with the dishes. Delia answered back. Ash then knelt down so he was eye level with Pikachu. Okay Pikachu, I promise you my mother is a good person, but if she tries to hold you, I have to ask you to save your Thundershock for me and not her. Deal, he requested. Pikachu figured that as acceptable and nodded. Pie, it replied. Then they walked into the kitchen just as Delia was stacking the last plate in the cabinet. She was still in her white apron and yellow rubber gloves and had her back turned to him. So what kind of Pokémon did you end up getting? Delia asked as she took off her gloves and began wiping her hands. I got the best one of them all, Mum. A Pikachu, Ash stated proudly. You got a Pikachu. I thought the starters were Charmander, Bulbasaur, or Squirtle, Ash's mum said in confusion before she turned around to face Ash and Pikachu. But they were already chosen by Sarina, Leaf, and Gary since I volunteered to go last. So then Professor Oak decided to give me this Pikachu. He told me that it had been abused in the past and trusted me to care for it and be its trainer, Ash replied. Oh, okay then, Delia replied before she then walked across kitchen to Pikachu and knelt down to give Pikachu a kind smile. Hello there, Pikachu. Pikachu tilted its head to the side and stared curiously at Delia. It could already sense that this also wasn't a bad human at all. She had a very kind and caring wave around her, the same one it could feel with Ash. It finally gave a smile back at Delia. Pikachu. It responded and gave Delia a wave with one of its small arms. Oh, you are a cutie, aren't you? Delia smiled as she reached out to rub Pikachu's head. Ash watched the scene nervously. The previous incident when Pikachu was touched without permission was still fresh in his mind. He hoped Pikachu would be able to keep its promise not to shock his mum. Ash braced himself for what might be a nasty scene, but to his great relief, Pikachu didn't shock Delia when she began to rub its head. Pikachu even seemed to be enjoying it. Cha, Pikachu cooed under Delia's soft touch. Hum. Delia chuckled softly as she finished. She then stood up and faced her son. All right, Ash, I've already got you packed up. I've got a backpack full of some things you may need for your journey, she told him as she walked out of the kitchen into the living room, her son and Pikachu following her. Once they entered the living room, Delia walked over to the couch where a green backpack with several pockets and zippers was laying on top of it. She picked it up and turned to face Ash. Okay, sweetie, I just want to go over some of the things I packed for you before you set out, she requested. Sure, Mum, Ash replied. He wasn't prepared for the barrage of things his mum was about to list. Here, she began, I have a fresh change of clothes if your current ones get dirty. I packed a few snacks in case you get hungry. I packed a jacket in case you get cold. Here is your sleeping bag since I imagine you will be sleeping outside some nights. Here are some nice rubber gloves and a water keg so you can do your laundry and dishes. Here is a thermometer so you can take your temperature. I also got Tylenol, cough syrup, your toothbrush and toothpaste, a few bars of soap, and… Mum, okay, I get it, thanks a lot, Ash cried as Pikachu watched curiously. Ash knew only a mum would be able to pack all those things in such a small backpack. Well, alright, I trust you, Delia sighed. She then gazed sadly at her son. She really would miss him while he was gone. She began to tear up. Oh, Ash, I'm going to miss you. Delia cried as she embraced her son. I'll miss you too, Mum, Ash replied as he returned the hug. Pikachu watched the heartwarming scene with interest. These two humans were not like any it had ever met before. They really did seem caring and friendly. Despite all the bad humans it had encountered in the past, these two had shown that they are good humans, after all. Ash and Delia soon let go and stared at each other for a moment longer before Ash spoke up. I gotta get going, Mum. I promised Sarina and Leaf I would meet him at the street corner so we could say our goodbyes before leaving. Are you ready, Pikachu? Pika, it said nodding its head. I understand. You wouldn't mind if I saw you off, would you? Ash's mum asked hopefully. Of course not, Mum. Let's go, Ash replied before he put on his backpack and walked out the door, followed by Delia and Pikachu. Ash, Delia, and Pikachu stepped outside and began walking toward the street. Ash turned around and paused. He wanted to take one last look at his home for 10 years before he began his journey. He had so many great memories here. The aroma of his mother's cooking, his cozy room. He would miss it all. Ash, Delia questioned, noticing her son's almost sad expression. Nothing, Mum, I'm fine, Ash answered. He then closed his eyes and turned around, continuing on his way. As Ash, Delia, and Pikachu were approaching the street corner, they could see Sarina and Leaf were already waiting for them. Leaf had brought her bike. She was clearly going to use it for quicker travel on her journey. They likewise had their mothers as well, Grace, Sarina's mum, and Rose, Leaf's mum. All four waved when they caught sight of them. It's about time you got here, Ash. Do you know how long we've been waiting? Leaf asked playfully with her hands on her hips. Sorry, Ash chuckled. I just wanted to have one last look around my house before I left. I won't be here for a while, after all. Now you aren't going to get homesick, are you? As a Pokémon trainer, you have to stay strong, Leaf said firmly. Oh really? As if you won't miss home, Rose interrupted her daughter. You were crying in my arms for 3 minutes at our house just now. Leaf was almost an exact copy of her mother. The only real difference was Rose's hair was darker, and she had a different shade of brown to her eyes than Leaf's. Mum, Leaf cried in embarrassment, turning beet red and causing the others to laugh. So are we all ready to part ways? Ash asked the group once they finished laughing. Yeah, I think I'm good, Leaf responded. Sarina wasn't ready, however. She had no idea where to even begin for this journey. She still didn't know what she wanted to do, and she was about to be away from everyone who had given her support so far. She knew if she went by herself, she would never succeed at this. She knew her mother was afraid of this happening. Perhaps if she, Ash, and Leaf traveled together, they would be able to support each other, and she could find inspiration along the way. Not to mention she would miss her friends, particularly Ash, if she was alone. Hey, guys, Sarina spoke up nervously, which grabbed their attention. What if we went on this journey together? That way, we could still be together and support each other. She hoped they would agree. That would be great, Sarina. Ash exclaimed, much to her relief. He then turned to Pikachu. Hey Pikachu, does that sound okay to you? We can have more friends so we aren't by ourselves. Pikachu agreed. Both Sarina and Leaf seemed to be okay. It decided it could tolerate them there as long as Ash was around. Oh, that's a wonderful idea. Grace added and clapped her hands together. Delia and Rose agreed. Leaf, are you in? Ash asked, turning to her. Leaf looked nervously at the ground and shuffled her feet. Actually, as fun as that sounds, I really want to do this journey by myself. I feel that if I can explore all of Kanto and go at my own pace, I can get more out of the experience. Well, you are definitely my daughter, Rose said with a smile. Always being independent. Oh, that's too bad, Ash replied in a disappointed tone, but he then brightened a little. I guess it's just you and me, Sarina. Sarina nodded. She may not be able to travel with Leaf, but at least she will have Ash. Just she and Ash, her crush, traveling together. Sarina's cheeks turned red at thought. Ah, Sarina. Are you okay? Ash asked in an unsure tone, causing the others in the group to facepalm. Typical young boy response. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get going, Leaf spoke up, which drew the attention back to her. She gave her mum one last hug before having a group hug with Ash and Sarina. Their parents smiled at how close they all were. Now Sarina, you better keep me up to date with how Ash is. If he ever treats you poorly, just let me know. I'll take care of him, Leaf said playfully with a wink. Hee, don't worry, I will, Sarina giggled. I wouldn't dream of it. Ash replied with a smile before turned to Sarina. We're going to have a blast, aren't we? Absolutely, Sarina agreed. Leaf then got on her bike. Well, I'll see all of you later. Take care, and keep in touch. With a final wave, she was off. Everyone continued to watch Leaf until she disappeared around a corner. Ash then turned to Sarina. Hey, we should get going as well, he said. Yeah, Sarina answered. She then gave one last hug to her mum. Bye, Mum. Goodbye, dear, Grace responded and leaned over to whisper in her daughter's ear. I know you'll figure out what you want to do. I have faith in you. Thanks, Mum, Sarina replied gratefully. And good luck with Ash, too, Grace whispered again before pulling away and looking at her daughter mischievously, which caused Sarina to turn red again. Ash then gave Delia another hug. I'll miss you, Mum, he said. Me, too. Make sure you two keep in touch with us, Delia replied as they pulled away. Don't worry, we will, Ash nodded and turned to Sarina. Well, are you ready? Sarina gave a nod, and Ash then shifted his attention to Pikachu. Pikachu, what about you? He asked this time. Pika, Pikachu confirmed. Now Ash, Grace said seriously, getting his attention. I want you to look out for Sarina for me. I want you to make sure she stays safe. Can I trust you with that? Absolutely. I won't let you down, Mrs. Gabiner. Ash nodded. Then with a final nod to their parents and Rose, they turned around and began to walk away. Here we go, Sarina thought. I'm really nervous right now. I may not know what I want at the moment, but I soon will. I can do it. I have Ash and Charla with me, after all. I'll make 'em and my mother proud. And maybe along the way, Sarina gave a quick glance at Ash and blushed, but he was too busy looking ahead to notice. Ash had his own thoughts that were going through his mind as well. This is it. I'm going to be the very best, like no one ever was. Pikachu and I will make an amazing team. Together with it and Sarina, I can overcome any obstacle. Look out, world. Ash was really pumped. He had been waiting for this day a long time. Now he was going to show the world what he was made of. Nothing was going to stop him now. He was excited. He was ready. He was determined. He felt powerful. He was. Don't forget to change your you-know-whats every day, honey. Delia called after him. Ash fell over in embarrassment.